Hey, welcome to the Game Informer Show, a weekly podcast covering the video game industry. Join us every Thursday, or in this case Friday, for a discussion about the latest gaming news, reviews, and exclusive reveals alongside Game Informer staff and special guests from around the industry. I am your temporary host, Marcus Stewart. Alex Van Aken out in California doing all kinds of important summer Game Fest stuff. So who knows what kind of hijinks he's getting into, but fear not, because I am joined by my co-host, Kyle Hilliard. How you doing, sir?
Hello. Usually when someone's out, we have to be like vague and cryptic about it, but now we can be like, oh, he's in California. He's at Summer Game Fest. You know?
Yeah, he's getting some like in and out or something, you know.
I think that's his main, that's the main thing he's doing, I think. Yeah, it's just burgers.
Yeah, that's why it's getting it for the rest of us. He's gonna...
Oh, great.
Yeah, just a very expensive drive-through thing. I don't know. And I am joined by our special guest, Mr. Scott White. How are you doing, sir?
Doing well. Just enjoying the nice, clean, hazy, smoke-filled air here. That's here in Michigan right now. It's great.
Oh man, you guys are getting it too? I mean, because everyone's talking about New York, but like it's also in Michigan as well.
It's nowhere near as bad out here, but definitely hazardous breathing conditions. Detroit a couple days ago was #1 in the world for worst air quality.
Oh, wait, what's happening? Why is thing? I'm unaware of all of this. Why
you don't know about this, Marcus? Canada's on fire and it's making a whole bunch of...
Wait, what?
Yeah, those pictures.
I'm sorry, this is how you learn, Marcus.
Yeah, surprise.
Oh, is it like forest fires? Is that what's happening?
Yeah, but it's specifically New York is getting like the brunt of it because all the terrible air is just like floating down to New York, so the skies are like yellow.
It's like it reminds me of the what was it, 2020 with the horrible California fires where the sky was orange.
Yeah, that's what's going on. Yeah.
Oh wow, okay, so you're getting some of that, Scott.
Yeah, it's a little hazy. It's still very much blue sky here, but we're poor air quality alerts. Don't breathe this. Kind of stay inside. Kind of good.
Yeah. Okay, I live in Florida, so I'm as far south from that as you could be. So yeah, I was not privy to that. But yeah, good luck to all of our neighbors up north. That's awful.
Yeah.
Hope that gets resolved soon. But yeah, Scott. I have you here for today for a very specific reason, because you are a big RPG fan, and we're going to be talking a lot about Diablo IV today. My review went up. Other people's reviews have been up for about a week, and I know you've been playing a lot of the game, so I'm gonna pick your brain about that, as well as expand on some of my thoughts. Before we do you want to give everyone just a quick primer on who you are and what you do?
Sure. So my name is Scott White. I am a freelance writer and content creator. I write for RPG site. I do some guide work for IGN, Irrational Passions, all sorts of places. But my main thing is I host the RPG podcast, RPG University, where I have guests on and we nerd out about RPGs we love, tabletop or video games, of course. Talk to developers and really just kind of recreate that nerding out on a couch with friends, while also providing information and helpful tips for new players, and sharing the internet's favorite memories of the game, including actually had David Brevik, the creator of Diablo, on some episodes of it. So yeah, it's a good time bringing it all together for today's episode here. So
I'm gonna put you on the spot. What's the best RPG ever made?
I'm not going to start the flame war. This is my first. this is my first time here. I appreciate it. I'm not going to start with my flame shields up and everything. But I have many recommendations.
It rhymes with Chrono Trigger.
Chrono Trigger. That's a solid one. That is a solid one. I'm a big proponent and advocate of the Legend of Heroes Trails series. So ask many of my friends. Legend of Heroes Trails in the Sky, Trails of Cold Steel, Trails from Azure to Zero from Azure, and all those games. Play those if you like turn-based RPGs. Persona, Shin Megami Tensei, all D&D, Pathfinder, all good stuff. So
Okay. It's all good at the end of the day, including this game, Diablo 4, which I'm so excited to finally get to unpack. You know, we didn't get to talk about it last week because I was still sort of waiting for it to be like out for realsies, you know, play around with the servers up, have other people in there to run into and give a little emote wave and then go about my day. But yeah, this game's really fun. It's a good Diablo. And it's funny for me because I'm what I guess you would call like a Diablo, maybe like newcomer or noob, because I got in with Diablo 3. And a lot of that is because I didn't grow up playing PC games because I didn't have a PC in my house for pretty much my entire childhood. And my first exposure to Diablo was actually in high school, where I was in a shop class and I shared a table with these two like punk rock kids that every single class period, without fail, they would only talk about what they did in Diablo 2 the night before, and then spend the entire class talking about, like, oh man, Diablo 2 is so good. Can you believe I did this? And I had no idea what they were talking about. I only gathered just through context clues that it was a game and that it was about, like, hell or something.
What year is this? Like, was it new? Like, had Diablo 2 just come out at that point?
I know, because Diablo 2 was what, like, 2000?
2000, something like that. Yeah.
It's just one of those games that like lingered. Like, just people played it for years and years and years. Yeah,
I mean Diablo 3 wasn't until like 2012, right? So it was like a good over a decade between those two releases.
Yep.
Yeah, because this would have been like 2004, 2003, 2004 when this was happening. But I remember just sitting there because they didn't talk to me because I didn't play, so I was like worthless to them. So the only time they acknowledged me was to be like, "Hey, can you pass us the hammer or something?" And then I would sit there and just listen to them, wondering like, "What is this? Is this game that good? I don't know how to play this game." And then playing Diablo 3, but okay, this is the thing that those two nerd guys really liked. I can say that because I'm not a nerd. I'm a super cool guy,
professional nerd.
And I like Diablo 3 quite. I came to that really late, where I actually played through the Switch version.
Okay.
Yeah, good handheld game. Text impossible to read, but other than that, fun little game to play on the go. But having played Diablo 4, spending over 80 hours with it, and not including all the other like betas and media opening things that I played, I think I'm finally in the mindset of those two guys. Right, I think about Diablo 4. I want to keep playing Diablo 4, especially as a guy that doesn't replay games very often. Like, I thought I would be sick of it after playing so much of it for the review period, and then immediately once the real version came out, I was like excited to get back in there, and a lot of that was like the idea of getting to play without the pressure of like that horrible deadline,
and that your character wouldn't be deleted for all time, so all the time you spent.
You should explain that. Like, it was such a weird setup that reviewers had to go through to review Diablo 4.
Yeah, so we got the game. Were you in the review period too, Scott? Okay, so we got the game we got it for 10 days. Like, it wasn't even a full 2 weeks.
No,
and the conditions were you have until the 10th day. Once that day comes, we're going to pull the review build offline. None of your progress will carry over to the finished version, so everything you did will be gone, which is terrifying because a big part of the game is its end game. So it was like, okay, not only do I have to beat this game in a relatively quick fashion, but I need to have enough time left over to explore as much end game as I can so I can talk about it in the review. And I will say for like the next like 10 days, that if I wasn't doing any other obligation, I was pretty much playing Diablo. Yeah. Which was rough. How was it for you, Scott?
Yeah, it was. So I wasn't reviewing it. I was working on it for from the guides angle. Scouring. So I wasn't necessarily. I had to beat the story and dive into endgame. I was assigned to find some collectibles and do other things. But were you playing, Marcus, on console or PC? I'm curious.
Console. I was on PlayStation.
Okay, so. The PC setup was kind of interesting because they gave the PC creators and reviewers and everything special Blizzard accounts that had access to this pre-review build. So they gave us all the login information for these special Blizzard accounts, and that's how we played on PC.
Did it like give you access to more like you were
No.
like a higher level character or something?
Not at all.
No,
We-
okay.
You could just install Diablo 4 like this preview build, and the rest sounds exactly the same. But yeah, it was a lot of diving in and figuring out, okay, what character do I want to spend a lot of time with, knowing that I will never play this character again. So I made the Swanson barbarian looking like Ron Swanson from Parks and Rec. It was a good time.
Perfect.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know if you did the same thing, but I actually, when the review period was wrapping up, I took a picture of my.
Oh, yeah.
I picked the sorcerer because he looked so cool, and it like the more you
Oh,
played,
yeah.
the more just upset you were that like I don't get to keep any of this.
That's why I went like I have never. So I got my start like with Diablo 2. I remember my older brother, playing the first Diablo, but I didn't really get into it until Diablo 2, and I've just never gravitated towards the big burly smack things really hard character types, archetypes. So I was like, I will play Barbarian. I'll be fine if I never play Barbarian again, but I want to do it. So, because yeah, the Sorceress, the Druid, Necromancer, all the Rogue, all these characters look so cool. So I was okay making the Swanson a Barbarian, but the characters all look really, really cool in Diablo 4.
Yeah, like the character creator it's pretty robust. You can make some pretty cool looking heroes in that thing. I spent more time in it than I thought I would every time I've used it, and I've always been pretty happy. And it helps too that a lot of the loot that you get looks pretty cool to the point where like, the cosmetic shop is like, oh, there's some cool looking stuff, but honestly, there's so much like great looking armor that you'll just find by playing. That's like, I don't know if there's anything that's gonna make me want to pay money for like a cool hat or I don't know, a chess piece or something. But yeah, the game it's it's like fundamentally it is still very much that Diablo experience of like, yeah, you're going around, there's like 100 enemies in front of you, you're more or less mashing or holding down a button and you're managing cooldowns, but like the combat feels a little bit more deliberate. Like having that evade helps because you have to time that where you're rolling out the way. The console version of Diablo 3 had that, so it comes back here, and it's like the way the enemies are designed. There's so many just different sorts of like threats that it feels like you're being challenged to use your skills smartly as opposed to just like. Like I'm just gonna hit everything as soon as it's available. It's like, yeah, you could do that, but like I feel like oftentimes you're even a little punished for like, oh, maybe I should have saved that for this specific guy. Like, there's a guy that's like summoning other enemies. I need to deal with him. I need something that can get to him really quickly, and I should probably save this one move that can like blow past the enemies just to get to him. Or there's a guy that shoots poison and it covers the whole field, and I'm like, oh, a shield would be great so I don't like feel any of that. And I think one of this game's biggest achievements for me is like I never ever respec in games ever. I tend to commit to what I have, usually either because I'm happy with it or honestly it's like sometimes just sheer laziness. So I'm like, I'll just brute force my way through that. I don't feel like, because I'm always afraid if I respec point I'm gonna forget how I had it. Like, oh, I gotta put this back now, how was it? I don't want to rebuild that house of cards. But in this game, one, because you're not going to unlock everything in the skill tree. Like, you do not have enough skill points for it ever. So it forces you to be a little bit more specialized in what you're building. But also because there's so many different challenges that it was actually exciting to go in there. But like, oh, actually, maybe I'll take this power out because I don't need it for this. And I'll try out this other power, which made me try things that I otherwise maybe wouldn't have. Like if it was like a sword of power, I was like, I don't know if I really want to use a defensive spell. I'm like an offense guy. But then you fight something, you're like, actually, like this flame shield makes this so much easier. I should just use this instead of trying to be just stubborn with it. But I feel like the game at every turn does a good job of like just challenging you, which I think for this game, which can become, in the beginning, can feel a little bit more mindless to the point where it might be boring because you're like, okay, I'm just hitting same buttons and just blowing back enemies. But as you get further in
that's where I'm at.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kyle, you talked a little bit about this.
No, honestly, I want to keep hearing about how you love it. I was just interjecting for a quick joke.
Yeah, I mean, I'll get to you, Biggs. I'm curious to know where you are at in Diablo 4 right now, but yeah, once you get deep enough to where you have more to play with, you've unlocked like a full hotbar of skills, and you're running into more interesting threats to where you are mixing things up more often, and also with the way you can customize your loot to emphasize your playstyle. Because you're finding great loot, and a lot of loot has different armor traits. That like, hey, this makes you go faster, or hey, this makes you hit harder, or you can do this and that. And at first, it can be overwhelming because you're getting so much of it, and you're still trying to figure out like, what do I want to be? And sometimes you're like, oh, I'm gonna put on whatever has like a green number because that just means it's better in some way, and not even giving thought to like maybe the finer nuances of what it is. But once you get to that point where again you have a little bit more to play with, I really started paying attention to that stuff because they make it matter in a way that is really cool. Where I don't know if you're the same way, Scott, where I was like constantly at the blacksmith bringing stuff, and then I also realized like actually it's probably more valuable to just break down loot than selling it, because I'd rather just upgrade the stuff that I have, or if I find something new that looks good, I'd rather just make it better. And just like the min-maxing of building like a super specialized like suit of armor and weapon system, it's so good. Like it feels like you're like Tony Stark constantly 100%. Upgrading 100%. Yourself, and it feels good when you got like, oh, okay, I think I got a good suit, I'm gonna go take this dungeon on, and watch it in action.
When you find a piece of gear that gives you like +1 or +2 ranks to that skill that you just use all the time, or that you've fallen in love with, that's the good stuff when you get those drops.
Have you gone over the plus? Like you can go over like the 5, and you're like, oh, I have 6 out of 5 for this Blizzard attack. I didn't even know that was possible. You're like,
it's like, don't tell Blizzard I just broke their game. I meant 6 out of 5 ranks. You know how it is.
They didn't know you could do that.
Pro strats. It's great times. I'm rocking Druid, so just kind of speaking on the ease of kind of respecking and trying different things. It's so much easier and quicker, and I feel intuitive in Diablo 4, because when you go into your skill tree, you just like right click. It's just a simple button press to refund a point that you've invested that you can quickly invest somewhere else. Like in Diablo 2, you had to go talk to special characters to respec. Diablo 3, I don't even remember how respecking worked honestly in that one, but I knew you could change like the modifiers and stuff on the fly. But it feels really good to, like you said, test and see what works well for you or suits the situation that you're going into, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, how are you, as someone that's played more Diablo than me, what stood out to you as like some of the biggest improvements of the game compared to the other ones?
The biggest change and the biggest improvement is just the interconnected world. This feels, Diablo 4 reminded me of Elden Ring. It's like, what if Diablo was like Elden Ring, like had a world like Elden Ring? Because there's so much things to find. You have the little orange missions that, like the side events that pop up. You have the dungeons that you can unlock more aspects, which will grant you legendary powers. You have the little cellar areas that will lead you to little challenges and loot. You have all these things that you're never more than, I feel like, 30 seconds away from discovering some event or something you can do in the world. And I love that aspect. Because it rewards exploring and just seeing what Sanctuary has to offer. And I think that's the biggest improvement, and the thing that I love the most about Diablo 4 so far.
Yeah, it's I don't think we can stress enough how big the game is, just like the landmass. Like it is. Yeah. I think when you zoom out, you don't really get a sense of it, but like the more you zoom in and you see how like tiny your little dot really is, and you're like, oh my god. And then you see like the waypoint way off in the distance, you're like, oh, that's gonna take forever to get there, but I gotta walk there, especially for how maybe one of my main criticisms is that maybe it takes a little too long to get a mount in this game.
1000%. My biggest gripe too.
Yeah, like you without getting into details, like you pretty much get it through the story if you're wondering. So just if you want it, just you can mainline the story, but even if you did, it's still going to take a good while. Like honestly, during the review period, because I was being pretty thorough trying to do side stuff, I didn't get the mount for like 50 hours.
Yeah.
And almost to the point where I was like, is this like actually working? Is this like maybe like in the review build it doesn't work? Like when is like, and because narratively there's no reason why you can't get one. Like you go to the guy and you're like, is there a reason why I can't just buy a horse, please? Yeah,
and narratively, like in the first maybe 30 minutes of the game, you accompany someone to the main town, and he buys a horse right away, and then just pieces out.
Yeah, he's like riding away, bragging basically. He's like, "Yeah, have fun walking." And you're like, "We're on the same team. Maybe you should get me a horse too."
Especially because you're not locked to having to complete the narrative. Like, for the most part, after you get to Kyovashad, or however you pronounce it, apologies, you can just go and explore other areas. Yeah, there are some areas locked behind, like
leveling, like
they still scale though. Like if you go to like a far, like in the Act 4 or Act 5 region, there'll be higher levels than you, but it still scales to whatever level you go to. So I've just been re-exploring the world and doing all this stuff. I haven't touched the narrative yet, but to your point, with the mounts being locked to the narrative, it penalizes people from just going and exploring too, because instead of locking it behind, for 150k you can get a license, and then for another 50k or whatever you can buy a mount or whatever idea, it's forcing players, you have to go through a majority of this game before you can get a mount, and that's what rubs me the wrong way the most.
Yeah, it does. But when you do get a mount, oh my god, it feels so nice, because one of my, like, as much as I like the world, there are times where because you don't have a mount and you have to run around, it does feel like a chore when you're like, okay, I just want to get to the next thing, and you're constantly getting like gang mugged by everything out there. Like, there's rarely a moment of peace when you're walking around. Like, you'll go 2 seconds and then like 10 people just come off screen to rush you. You're like, and sometimes, or even if I wasn't necessarily like in a rush to get somewhere, it's like, I kind of wish this was scaled back a little bit, because I kind of want to soak in the world and like the great music and stuff. And like I feel like I'm getting jumped constantly. Like, it's cool that you'll always have something to kill, but there were some times where like I just kind of want to soak this in a little bit. And a horse, it makes it easier because you can just blow past enemies. Like, and you can walking too, but it's just harder. Unless you upgrade your walking speed, which I did in the review build, where I was like speed running basically everywhere.
Power walking.
But mentioning the narrative too, that was maybe my biggest surprise. Like, I could not tell you the narrative of Diablo 3 in detail. I was just kind of playing it. It was just a fun dungeon crawler, but I just didn't really care that much about the story at the time I was playing it. But for this one, I was like 100% like in on it, and a lot of it has to do with the improved cinematography. Like, there's more in-game cutscenes and CG cutscenes than in the series past. I think the story is actually, for how much it draws upon like previous Diablo games and lore, it also isn't like up its own butt about it, to where like if you're not aware of any of that stuff, you'll still be fine. Because I consider myself one of those people, and I was like, oh no, I totally follow what's going on here. Like, there's some good context clues of like, oh, I don't know this person. Or if there are characters that you meet where you get the vibe of like, okay, this is clearly someone from like Diablo 2. But something about the way it like the clear reference that this game has for its history, I found it to be so infectious, where I actually kept the wiki open, because I wanted to know more of like, okay, this guy seems cool, and I can tell he's from something else. I'm gonna look him up real quick. Like, not a lot of, I guess, established series that you kind of jump into maybe midway do that for me. But then just the narrative itself, like, I don't know, I like the characters. Like, I love Lorath. I think Lorath might be one of my favorite characters of the year. And also, like, the performances are great. Like, I was just super into what they were doing. What did you think of the narrative, Scott?
I'm really liking it. So I played a lot of the narrative in the I did the server slam, and then in the review period, I spent a lot of time doing narrative there. And yeah, the nods back to and name drops of characters you've interacted or just heard of in previous Diablos. I definitely had to watch some lore videos as refreshers beforehand. But no, it's a very intricate story, and it's, like you said, it's great for people that are both newcomers that are just jumping into the bandwagon of Diablo, and there's a lot of cool Easter eggs and things for longtime players as well. It's special, and the care and the ability like legitimately see your character in all the cutscenes, it really helps bring you in. which
And
is
that they
a
talk
nice
too.
region.
They're not silent protagonists. Like they're interacting with everyone.
Yeah. No, it's good stuff.
Yeah. Kyle, you have been playing Diablo. First and foremost, where are you at? I'm curious.
I mean, it's like not really at all. Like I played the first, I don't know, what do you call them, dungeons, right?
Yeah.
Like there's like in the opening of the game that you get sort of drugged by the local people, right? Like you think you're there and you're like, oh, I'm helping you guys, but then they drug you and like drag you into a shack behind the bar.
Yeah,
like that's that's where I stopped last time. So really, like, not very far at all.
Yeah, so you haven't even gotten to Kyovashad, which is like the first real city.
No.
Okay.
No, which is like why I'm like kind of just sitting here quietly. I've never, this genre has just like never clicked with me. I don't really know why. I don't like loot. I don't like looking at things in a menu and trying to decide what to equip. Like, that's not fun for me. And then like, this is just going to be my little negativity corner. I don't get the combat. Like, I'm just like, I walk up to a group and hold down A for a while. Like,
what are you playing, like your class?
The bow and arrow lady. That's
Rogue?
the class name, I think.
Sure.
Yeah. I guess so.
Legendary bow and arrow lady class.
Bow and arrow lady. But that being said, like, I do want to give it more time because, like I said, this genre has never clicked with me. I've played a couple other within this genre, you know, like loot collecting, sort of overhead perspective action game. Just never, and I've played them a lot. I think I've even reviewed a few for Game Informer, where like I sat down and played these full games. But like there's clearly something is clicking about Diablo 4 with a lot of people. And the other thing for me is like, I always need a game to play when I do my indoor bike, right, a couple times a week. And Zelda was great for that. But I'm sort of done with Zelda. Like I've played that game to a point where I'm ready to move on and play other games.
Oh my god!
And
that's huge news in itself.
Yes, yeah. I got all the shrines, so once I hit all the shrines, I felt pretty good about sort of taking a break. I have a couple side quests left, so maybe if I have a Zelda itch in a few weeks, I'll have some stuff to go back and do. But and then the other, I was on my bike and I started playing Planet of Lana. Which I like, but I was like, this is a terrible like workout game. Like to sit here on the bike and try to like solve puzzles is just like, this is just those two things are just not lining up. But Diablo, I think, is going to be great for it because it is a little more just like jump in there and do a bunch of action, right? Like it's like, I don't want to say mindless. I feel like mindless does it a disservice, but it is a little bit more of just like a lot of stuff can happen without you engaging directly, right? It's like things just happen by nature of you kind of walking around and pressing A. So that's all that said. Like that's my sort of intention for Diablo. It's going to be my workout game, and I'm going to give it a real shot and see if a game in this genre will finally get its hooks in me. If it's not this one, then maybe I could just need to sort of recognize that the genre is just never going to be for me, and that's okay.
I will say for the loot thing, 'cause I'm not too far away from you with loot. Like, it depends on the game, but I overall have a bit of loot fatigue because, you know, that's like 1 out of every like 3 video games now. And I also get frustrated when, you know, you're in a menu so much because you're constantly getting better stuff, so you feel like you can't get attached to anything. And I think this game, maybe to like my shock, has a lot of options where you can really get the most out of the things that you're wearing, to where you're not always switching stuff. Like I said in my review, that as weird as it sounds, I'm kind of glad you're not finding great stuff all the time. Like I feel like they've struck a nice balance to where you'll get legendary gear. Like it's rare enough to feel special, but it's not like scarce to where you're like, oh my god, when was the last time I got like a genuinely good piece of gear? But the game gives you so many options for customizing your loadout, to where like if you just find something where like I just really like this, like the stats on it are really working for me, and until I find something similar that's better, I'm gonna roll with this. You can just keep upgrading it, or if you find something that like, you know, like there's an occultist store where you find like a weapon, you're like, oh man, this has a really cool like aspect on it that would really help me, but I don't want to use the weapon it's used for. Like you can just take that ability out of it and then put it into something you're using. You're just like pluck it, put it in the thing, and then you can get rid of the thing that you took it from. And I found
that I love all that, because like The one that I always think of is this game I really loved, which was Darksiders 2.
Oh yeah.
And the structure of that game was like you were solving Zelda puzzles and doing Zelda action, but I'd had to pause like every 5 minutes because like every boot I picked up was like +1 and worthwhile to equip. And I just got so annoyed with it by the end of the game that I was like, I don't want to stop. I don't want to pause solving this puzzle to equip a different shoe. So like the fact that it's like the pace of it, from what you're saying, is that it's like, you know, you get good stuff periodically, so you're not digging in there as much, is really enticing to me. That's actually like a weird, like, smart thing.
Yeah, and even like junk stuff, you know, there's always a use for it. Like you can, like I mentioned before, you can sell it, you can break it down to upgrade your existing stuff. Like I didn't mind even picking up garbage stuff just because I was like, okay, this is just gonna make the stuff I do want to use better because it's just fodder for it. So I didn't mind. Like it just feels like there's a system in place to reward you for like just every aspect of play, whether it is like armor creation or even just like renown became like a big like thing for me to chase because, you know, it's basically the leveling tier that just rewards you for just doing stuff like exploring, like hey, you found a new city or you found a new dungeon or you did a quest and we're going to make a meter go up every time you do those sort of like routine tasks. And then when you hit a certain milestone, it's like, hey, you got an extra skill point, or hey, you can hold more potions now, which is the thing that I was chasing the most.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was like, oh, what? I can hold more potion. Okay, I'm gonna get level 2 on everywhere. I think that's the thing that's like keeping me in here the most, is like it is the ultimate dopamine drip of like it's so satisfying to make meters go up.
Right, yeah.
And this game is a very good one of those, whether it's like, oh man, the art, I got my meter up on this helmet that I've been working on all the way. Now it's the ultimate version of it. Or like now I've got max renown in Skosglin, or, you know, I've unlocked the full skill tree. Now I'm on the Paragon board, and, you know, that's a whole other adventure. It's just, man, it does like the spinning plate thing really, really well. You know?
Yeah, and what I appreciate, like, especially like with the loot and things, is you can put as little or as much time into it as you want. Like with loot and gear, like Marcus was saying, if you want, you can just look for the green. If there's something green, you can throw it on and be good. As you progress, if you want to more specialize, if you learn your character and you're like, I really like this aspect or this move, then you can advance and turn on the more advanced item descriptions, or you can start comparing. It's very much up to the player how much or how little they want to really invest into like the min-maxing or going through all their loot. And that's what I really appreciate, and I've always really appreciated with Diablo. It's one of those games where, unlike a lot of games as a services, I don't feel bad if I put Diablo down and walk away for 6 months, 7 months. Yeah. When I come back, when I get that itch, it's like, I just want to slay some stuff, get a cool looking character, get some new gear. I can jump back in for a week or two, satisfy that itch, and not feel guilty or be like, oh, where was I again? That's what's always been really attractive about Diablo and these style of games, that I can just jump in, satisfy that craving, and then jump back out with little to no guilt or reacclimating myself.
I mean, that's probably why Diablo 2 is just like lingered for as long as it did. Like, it's just people they're still updating it, right? Haven't they like issued a recent update to Diablo 2?
Well, I mean, they did that full-on remake.
They did that, yeah. But even around that time, I feel like they were still like updating the original periodically. But yeah,
ladders and stuff.
I was say, Scott, I mentioned, what do you think of the shared world stuff? Like, do you think it's a good addition, negligible? What do you think?
That is, like, it's okay. Like, I don't mind it. If it was between keeping the shared world and having an option where I didn't have to play Diablo 4 online, I would throw away shared world in an instant just to be able to play Diablo 4 offline. I hate games that require always on connections. And like with the reports of the first hardcore player losing their character because of a disconnect and things like that, it's
Oh
it's
no!
so brutal.
By the way,
Blizzard should give that
hardcore mode is if you die, your character gets wiped.
Right.
Like they're just permanently. Yeah. Oh man.
And there was someone who was like they were the furthest. Like I don't know all the context, but like it was totally out of their hands that they lost their character. Right? It was like completely unfair.
Yeah. So the Scar, I apologize, I can't remember the streamer and player's name, but he was the first player to hit level 100 hardcore because Blizzard was doing this big contest, first 1,000 players to reach a level 100, the max level on hardcore gets their name added to a statue. So the first player that had it did it with the character, and they, like a couple days ago, it was earlier this week, found them in a situation where the connection was unstable. I mean, it was main launch week this week, so connection's been a little funky. And they disconnected in like a dungeon, and when they came back, their hardcore player had been killed, and that just like that because of a disconnect. It was nothing they did. It was just the server being wonky because of the always on, and gone is the first level 100 hardcore. And
Karn. It looks like
Karn
is the streamer's name.
Yeah, gone but not forgotten. Karn.
Yeah. Blizzard needs to like step in and like fix that for them, right? Like. They probably will. Like they can just give him a character, right? They have the tools. Like they need to throw him a bone.
Yeah.
That sucks.
So what they don't tell you about hardcore is that you're also like you're battling against the mercy of the servers too. That's part of the experience. It's a
the
feature.
Ultimate challenge. Oh, that's funny.
Right.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat where if you gave me the choice to not have it, I would take it. But it's also less obtrusive. Like I've been lucky to where at least now that it's out for real, I haven't really run into any major server problems or disconnects or even login stuff. And I will say, like, and I mentioned this in my review, like it does lend to some cool emergent moments where, like, I primarily play solo, and there's times I'm like, oh, I'm running into this mob of enemies that really got me on the ropes, and then out of nowhere I see like a fireball come off screen and blast them, and I'm like, oh, the cavalry's here. Like, just someone was wandering by and was like, I'm going to help this guy out.
That's cool.
And then
same with world bosses. Though that's always a cool having just random people join up to take on the world bosses, the big bads of the regions. It's very cool.
I had a legit Return to King moment where I was almost about to get beat by a boss who had a bunch of like little minions, and then a necromancer with like their ghost army came in and just cleaned house. And they were like probably like 10 levels higher than me, but it was like thank God, because I don't know if I would have pulled this off without you. Thank you so much.
Is the idea that there's just like random instances where like someone will just be playing the same location as you, and they just sort of overlap those games? Is that what's going on?
There's different. It's not MMO where you're not going to see a gazillion players all at once. Like the most you'll ever see players is like at the different towns, but even then, at least in my experience, it's probably like 10, 20. Yeah, it's not 20.
Like it's
not like MMO where like all you see is a bunch of screen names cluttering the screen.
Right.
But even while you're exploring, you might come across another person once in a while. Like to me, it's just often enough to where you'll forget that it's an always online game, but then when it does happen, it feels kind of special, and especially again in those moments where you're like, oh, I could use a hand, or maybe like I'm gonna go help that dude. He's trying to do a live event, maybe having a hard time, and I'm gonna get in there. And then also to make it easier for you, you can just instantly party up with strangers if you want. Like I got some random party invites from people. It's like that stuff I think is cool, and I could see that kind of like helps justify the argument for why this is the way that it is.
For me, I think Diablo 2 handled it the best. You can make an offline character or an online character. Just like just offer a way that if people wanted to simply play offline or like just have the local install, that they could. I think that's the big thing. I don't mind always on as long as you give an option where people, if needed or desired, can play offline. Just from a game preservation standpoint, I'm a big into the game preservation mindset, and these always on games just present issues in addition to the disconnects and things like Karn suffered. But it is the shared world aspect is very cool. I think it is handled very well.
Yeah. And I think we'll wind it down here. Overall, though, like we said before, I'm really happy. I'm excited to put even more hours into it, especially now that my character gets to stay with me forever now if I wanted to. But I'm having a blast. Kyle, I'm curious to see if you stick with it and what you think as you go along. Maybe we should just run co-op. together, see if that
Yeah.
change things. They handle co-op well, where even if we're like vastly different levels, like the enemies in your game are going to be your level, and the enemies in my game are going to be my level.
It's funny because Marcus, I think you and I are sort of like, I think we've talked about this before. You and I just don't really like playing with other people, like in general, right? Like,
yeah, like I'm generally like I feel like that makes it sound like we hate people.
No,
but, like,
I only hate some people. No, but I think that would be funny if like you and me were like the two sort of out, like we're like single player people. We like playing alone.
Minded,
like what if the two single player people teamed up?
There we go. Let's do it. Let's break the
sitcom that writes itself is what I'm saying.
There you go.
But I have played with some people. Scott, I know we got to play together at some point for sure.
Yeah.
It is a lot of fun when you have at least one other person in there, combining abilities, all that good stuff. But yeah, Scott, before we let you go, where can the fine folks find you and your work? And feel free to plug anything that you're working on.
Oh, thank you so much. You can find me on Twitter at Professor RPG. You can find RPG University, the podcast, at _RPG University on Twitter. And yeah, you can find my work on RPG site. Got some cool stuff coming out over on Polygon with board game stuff soon. All sorts of stuff. So yeah.
Awesome. And thank you so much for coming on. And when we come back from this break, Kyle and I are going to react to Summer Games Fest. All the hot announcements, all the less hot announcements. We're unpacking it all when we come back. Welcome back to the Game Informer Show. We're still here. Kyle and I, it's just you and me, man. You feeling good?
Us?
Yeah, just two of us, like, hanging out, talking about video games, all, I guess, by our lonesome. Like, you were joking before about the two single-player guys teaming up. I guess we're kind of already doing that. And I guess technically we do that on a weekly basis with, like, replay and stuff. But
yeah, that's true. Well, we were going to try to have more, but, like a bunch of folks were in Los Angeles doing Summer Games Fest stuff, playing, getting hands-on and that kind of thing. So this is how it works out. And it's good.
Yeah, keep you entertained. Much like Jeff Keighley kept us entertained or attempted to, I guess we'll get into what we think about Summer Games Fest, which happened yesterday, which is why the Game Informer show is a little late this week, because we decided we wanted to wait a couple days to react to it. But we have watched it. We wrote up some bunch of news stories. And I will say, before we run down sort of like the big announcements and just whatever stood out to us, I would like your overall impression, Kyle, of Summer Games Fest this year. Did you think it was a hit, a miss? How are you feeling coming out of that thing?
It was an okay show. It was like a C plus B minus show, I feel like. But not like, certainly not terrible. Certainly, like, there have been, Keighley events that have been, it's like in the far past where they were like, ooh, this is rough. And this was certainly not one of those, but there weren't like a ton of surprises, right? Like the biggest trailer, the biggest reveal was the Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which is very exciting. And I'm very excited for that game. But it's a game we knew existed. It's a game we've been wanting to know more on. It was nice to see footage of it, but like nothing like that sort of blew me away at this particular event. I don't know if you feel similarly. Maybe I'm being too negative.
No, I'm kind of with you, especially when I was sort of going over it again. Like I rewatched some of it last night and a bit this morning. And when I was really looking at like the list of what was announced, it was kind of like, yeah, there really wasn't a ton here. And I was wondering, like, is this not that it was a bad show necessarily?
No, it's really,
but it was like, yeah, like C plus is kind of where I'm at. And I was thinking, like, is this maybe the most underwhelming Summer Games Fest that we've had so far? Like, this is what, the third one of these, fourth, something like that. It started during the pandemic. And I was like, maybe this is the weakest one we've had, Nicolas Cage aside. But
Nicolas Cage was actually pretty fun. Like this, as far as celebrity cameos at a Keighley event goes, I feel like this was like probably one of the most successful ones.
Some might argue his bit was the best part of the show.
Right? Yeah, like Al Pacino showing up, was it at the Game Awards, As much as we all love Al Pacino, it was very much like, did you come here by accident? Like, what are you doing here?
Do you also have a son that's into Dead by Daylight? Is that why you're here?
Right. I'm curious. Actually, I know, what does he say? Nicolas Cage was like, no one's ever invited me into this space, into the video game space. And I was wondering, I was like, is that right? Like, I wanted to look and see if he was in the Ghost Rider, like, PS2 game, right? Wasn't there like a Ghost Rider PS2 game?
Yeah. They would have had to use a likeness for that, right? Because that was like a licensed game. So
I pulled up the Wikipedia page and I'm doing a search for the word Cage. So I'm guessing he probably was not. Like, I wondered if maybe he had done voice work for it, because there was a weird period there where like video games based on like movies, like, were able to get the full cast. Like the Batman Begins video game, they had Christian Bale and like Michael Caine. It was like, it's wild.
I always think about the Spider-Man movie games, like especially the like first two, because of how uninterested Kirsten Dunst in particular her performance. Like, you could tell she just did not want to do the thing, and was just like, yeah, I guess I'll sit in this booth. But even everyone else, like even Toby, who was probably the most like into it was noticeably flatter than like his performance in the movies.
I guess, you know what, now that I'm looking at it, I guess I thought maybe he was in the Ghost Rider game, but looks like that was not the case. So
they didn't invite him even in his own movie. They were like,
you're not allowed.
To be fair, that movie's bad anyway. But yeah, Summer Games Fest. There was some stuff that stood out. I have a rough list of all the things that were announced. We don't have to spend a ton of time on each of them, but I'll kind of run down the list and we can talk about whatever stood out. I think it started relatively strong with Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. A brand new side-scrolling Prince of Persia game, not the remake. Ubisoft decided to basically like leapfrog over that thing. Was like, you know what? Let's just put out this new thing in the meantime. But the new thing looks pretty dang cool.
Yeah, I mean, it kicked off the show, which sort of set it up for me anyway, of being like, oh, this is great. What a great way to kick off the show. I love Prince of Persia. We've been overdue for something with Prince of Persia. This looks great.
Yeah.
Like, I think that game looks awesome. The press release for the game does use the term Metroidvania, which I love. Like, so I'm very much on board with this. This was actually probably, maybe my most like exciting thing from the show, honestly, was like the thing I was most excited about.
Yeah, honestly, in terms of especially of like brand new stuff, this would be number one. Do we know which Ubisoft studio is doing this one?
We don't. I mean, like I said, I did get a press release for it. I could maybe.
Yeah. I only ask because I know Montreal took back the remake from Mumbai, who was originally doing a remake. So like the main like Montreal studio is busy with that. I don't know if they're also pumping this one out, because the Montreal was like the Prince of Persia studio,
right? Yeah.
So I don't know if they're pulling double duty or not.
I can't even find the press release. I don't want to spend too much time on it if I can't find it. But yeah, that game looks cool. I love the way that looks like a really fast-paced like platformer with cool action set in the it's not like it's like a new Prince of Persia universe. There's some story where he's like a member of the Immortals or something.
I didn't know if it was like, at first I was like, is it a remake of the original Prince of Persia because they're going back to the 2D style, or like but I think you're right where it's just like this is just a new different Prince.
Yeah, I mean there's a whole story of like again, I was surprised it was in the press release. Like they explained like it's like this is his name is Sargon, I think, and he's a member of an elite crew called the Immortals, which is funny because that's kind of what's going on in Immortals of Avium as well. Is there's like an elite group of soldiers called the Immortals. But anyway, yeah, Prince of Persia looks great. Can't wait to play that game. January, I think it is.
Hell yeah. You know what also looks great? The first gameplay reveal of Mortal Kombat 1, which was the next announcement.
Oh, yeah.
Big look at that game. It's funny because I feel like there were some people that were wondering, like, what's this game going to look like? And I was like, it's going to look like a 2D Mortal Kombat game. That's exactly what it looks like. Not that that's a slight, but I don't know why people thought... There was some people that thought it was going to be more than what it would be. But we got to see the cameo fighters, which I think I want to say that I called exactly what that was going to be, where I was like, I think it's just going to be they come in, do a move, and leave, and wasn't true tag team gameplay. So I want to pat myself on the back for that prediction. I wish that was one of my official predictions. Which, by the way, if you're wondering, Charles isn't here, but this will not be a like resolution of the bet that we made last week, because some of those bets or predictions are for shows that have not happened yet, namely Microsoft. And for me, I mean, one of my guesses was for a Nintendo show that has not been announced yet. So
right, yeah.
Maybe we might be waiting a little bit before we see who won that thing. But
we also made specific Microsoft and Ubisoft predictions as well. And those shows are not happening until Sunday and Monday. So
yeah. So,
but I'm like looking at the list now. I definitely lost pretty much all of mine because all of mine were for Summer Games Fest.
Were they all Summer Games Fest specific?
Pretty much. I mean, I can go through real quick. I said Hazelight was going to have a new game. Didn't happen. I said Death Stranding 2 was going to get an official title. Didn't happen. Splinter Cell, we could still see at Ubisoft show. And then I said Final Fantasy VII Remake finally coming to Xbox. Didn't happen, but that one could still happen at Xbox show. So maybe I'm not quite as in the losses column as I thought I was, because there's still a couple things that could come through.
It's funny because like in hindsight, your guesses were pretty safe because like Joseph Fares and Hideo Kojima are like the two like usual suspects for like a key lead show, and neither of them had any presence here. And like the FF remake thing, like I could totally see that, man. I'm actually, now that makes me scared because I feel like you had some pretty like like likely picks. But then again, none of us said that Lizzo would show up at anything, so I think we're good.
Well, Lizzo could still show up at Ubisoft for Just Dance was our prediction.
She
so.
better not, is what I have to say for our sakes. Ryu is coming to Exoprimal. They're doing a Street Fighter 6 thing, like a crossover.
That's fun.
I saw someone comment saying if they don't go the other way where they put a T-Rex in Street Fighter 6, then they are cowards, which I agree with that sentiment.
Well, I love that chart that people have of everyone that Ryu has ever fought, right?
Yeah.
And you can add a bunch of dinosaurs to that now, which is pretty great.
Yeah, it's funny because he's an exosuit. It's not Ryu. The character is like an exosuit modeled after Ryu. So there is a human inside of a Ryu-shaped robot.
And Guile as well, right?
Was Guile there too? I
thought so.
Don't think I caught
I could
that.
be wrong.
I mean, you might be right. I think I was so fixated on Ryu that I might have missed Guile.
I didn't really connect those dots. Yeah, you're inside a Ryu robot, basically. That's weird.
They should
that
make
game's weird, though.
I would like to be... and I would like a Street Fighter mech. I would like to be. I gotta be careful how I phrase this. I would like to be inside of a Street Fighter. But
careful.
We mentioned Nicolas Cage. That's next month that happens. Nicolas Cage coming to Dead by Daylight. He's a survivor, not a killer, and he's also just himself. He's not playing a character. I've never played Dead by Daylight, but I would like to know if you can have a team of survivors that are all just the same character, because I would only want to do like a team of just Nick Cages running away from, Pyramid Head or whatever monster is in there.
Right.
That seems like the way to go, honestly. So I hope that you're allowed to do that. But that's in July. This was a smaller announcement that I think at least we didn't really acknowledge, but Remnant 2 got a release date. That's coming out July 25th. The sequel to Remnant from the Ashes.
Yeah.
I called it out just because I actually like that game. I played that whole game with 2 other friends because it's 3-player co-op. Played the expansion too. It was fun. Fun little mix of Souls and Gears, basically. Like if you combine Dark Souls with Gears of War, that's that game.
Yeah, I've only heard good things about Remnant. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was cool to see.
I like that studio a lot. I think was that Machine Games? It's like a bunch of former Darksiders people and.
Yeah, not Machine Games, but I forget the name of. The Remnant team. Machine Games is that's the Wolfenstein team.
Oh, right, you're totally right. Yeah.
They got the Indiana Jones thing going on.
Doesn't it have the word gun in it though, or something?
Gun machine. Machine gun. Let's see, real quick.
Yeah, I'm trying to find it. I'm taking like way too long.
We're racing.
Gunfire. Gunfire. I knew it was like machine gun something. Yeah, okay. Gunfire. Yeah, I like Gunfire.
They're called Pew Pew Studios.
Pew Pew Studios. Yeah. Yeah, they did Darksiders. They have like a history with Darksiders and stuff like that. Like they did Darksiders 3 and yeah. Good stuff.
So we mentioned Prince of Persia probably being most exciting like new announcement, but the only other announcement that might rival it is Sonic Superstars, which is a brand new side-scrolling Sonic the Hedgehog game made by Sonic Team. So it's
they have said that, yeah.
I believe it was confirmed that this is Sonic Team. It's not a sequel to Sonic Mania because it's like 2.5D graphics. Right. So basically, kind of them going back to what they did with Sonic 4 a little bit of like, hey, we're gonna make another one of the classic games, which is exciting but like, Sonic 4 was cool until you picked it up and played it.
So you can say it, Marcus. You can be honest. Sonic 4 was not liked.
And you know, it's weird because it's like, if it was like any other platformer, it would be fine. But the problem with Sonic 4 is that the physics did not feel like Sonic. If it was anything else, it'd be like, this is a totally acceptable platformer. Like, I don't want to say it's a bad game. It just didn't feel right. It was like fine, and I finished it. And I guess both parts, they did that in 2 parts for some weird reason. But hopefully they learn a lesson here because it looks super good.
Yeah, I like the look. I'm not a Sonic person. I mean, if I were honest with myself, I'd say the Sonic that I actually do like is like the good 3D Sonics, like the Sonic Adventures and stuff like that. Like I enjoyed those games.
So weird.
Was never a 2D Sonic kid. And like going back to Sonic 2D lately, if I go back and play Sonic 1 or 2, it's not a style of game I really like in terms of platform. I like really specific platforming, you know, where it's like you can be really like specific and you know where you're going to land. And the thing about Sonic is, to me, is just like, it's about speed, you know. It's about like really just sort of jetting across the level, which has just never really clicked for me. But
so Sonic Mania didn't do anything for you either. Or
no,
did you play it?
Not really. But like this game, I like the look of it. Like I was like, I was charmed by it, and I was more like watching the trailer. I was like, I'm more into this than I thought I would be for like, you know, new Sonic things.
Yeah.
So,
did you play Frontiers?
I did a little bit. Yeah, I played the first couple hours, and like, I liked what I played. You know, like when 3D Sonic can be really bad.
Yes.
But when it even like borders into like decent, like I tend to have a good time.
Like we have both. You played Sonic 06 for the replay, right? Were you on the sticks for that?
I did. Yeah. Well, we passed the controller when we played that, so I you know, I didn't play the full thing, but let's just say I played enough.
I was gonna say, as someone that has also played that game from start to finish,
not great.
We've both tasted the worst of what Sonic can be, and it's funny. I'm the opposite of you, where I'm an old school Genesis fan, and I've always preferred 2D Sonic. I've never really been a fan of 3D Sonic. I would like to be, but like they've never gotten that character right in 3D to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're the more common fan. You know what I mean? I think if you like Sonic, when you say, "Oh, I like Sonic," you're generally referring to 2D Sonic.
Oh yeah, like it's gonna be like Sonic 1, 2, 3, Knuckles, CD, Mania.
Yeah.
So this is like right up my alley. I hope, for the love of God, it just has to feel good. Especially because the 4-player co-op looks cool. You know, you can play as Tails, Knuckles, and Amy in there. Yeah, that thing looks awesome. I'm excited to see that comes out later this year at some point. I wonder if it'll be $70 just because I know Sega announced recently they were going to start doing that. And, like, that seems like a lot for this kind of game, but also Sonic's their flagship character. So, like, there's no way they wouldn't make a new Sonic game, $70, but I guess we'll find out.
We'll see.
Lies of P got a release date. That's coming out September. And it got a free demo, which I checked out a bit of last night. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I want to check it out. Wait, how was it? What'd you think?
I need to finish it, but it's pretty fun. It's like it's a Souls game. it's one of those. It plays, you know, everything about it, at least from my play, is familiar. Maybe the Legion arm, which is like your Pinocchio's little robot arm thing, is like the most unique thing. But even then, it's sort of like, at least like you did different versions of it throughout the game. You could put guns and stuff on it, but at least in this demo, you could just do like a really good punch.
Well, that's very Sekiro, you know.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. And like even at the beginning, like the starter town that you're in has like heavy Bloodborne vibes, which is like the main point of comparison this game has had throughout its existence. It's like, man, it looks like Bloodborne with dolls. And like when you get into that town, it like when you see the little carriages everywhere, you're like, oh my god, this looks like that opening area of Bloodborne so much. But it looks nice. The enemies look cool. Like everyone's just like these weird, like basically like killer nutcracker looking enemies that I kind of like. They're all like these weird toys that are coming at you. I need to go back in and finish it. But I liked what I played so far. It seems solid.
Cool. I want to check out the demo for sure.
Sandland, a game that you and I and everyone else in our work Slack had to do some Googling when he announced like Akira Toriyama's hit manga. We're making a game, and I'm like, outside of Dragon Ball and Dr. Slump, I'm like, what else has he done?
Blue Dragon.
And yeah, did that get a manga?
I know I got an anime. I don't know if I got a manga.
But yeah, Sandland, apparently a manga that he wrote in 2000.
It's like I've been familiar with it for some time because I love Toriyama, love Dragon Ball, love Dragon Ball Z, love Chrono Trigger. Like I love Toriyama's art. So I knew about Sandland. I believe it is getting an anime adaptation pretty soon. Or
wait,
if
it never had one?
I don't think so. I mean, that's the thing. It's like I don't.
I only asked just because it's been around for so long, apparently, that you would think it would get an anime before it got a game. But maybe I guess they're just going all in on Sandland.
Yeah, no, there's a movie coming out this year, in August. And so like I knew about it from that. Like I'd seen little bits and pieces and like teases for that, and it was like, oh yeah, Toriyama's, manga that isn't Dragon Ball, Sandland. But yeah, when it came up in the show, I was like, I think you said something like, oh, I'm not familiar with this, and I was like, oh yeah, it just came out, and then I was surprised to do a quick Wikipedia search, and I was like, oh no, I'm way off. This thing came out in like 2000. I just never got around to reading it, or but yeah.
Yeah, you play as is it Beelzebub, like the demon? It's like the main character.
Oh yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah, and at least gameplay wise, it's an open world like action RPG. It looks cool. Again, I'm with you. Where like I'm a huge Dragon Ball fan. I love Toriyama's art. It's one of the reasons why I love Chrono Trigger and the Dragon Quest games. So like seeing this, you're like, oh. At first, I thought it was like, oh, maybe this is Dragon Quest 12 because that's been silent forever.
Sure, yeah. And we haven't seen any characters from that yet. All we've seen is a
nothing.
Logo.
Yeah, a logo, and that's it. Who knows what's going on with that thing? But so yeah, that day for a split second, I thought that this was that. But this looks cool. I'm open to becoming a Sandland convert, I guess.
A Sandland stan.
There you go, Sandland stan over 20 years later.
I want to know. Like, I like that there's a video game because, like I said, I've been familiar with Sandland, but I haven't engaged with it at all. And this is how I will engage with Sandland. Is like I'll probably play this game. Oh, maybe I'll watch the movie. We'll see. I'm excited to check that out.
Yeah. Also, do you derive as much pleasure just saying Sandland? Like it's a fun title.
It's a good name.
Yeah.
Sandland. Yeah.
Sandland.
And I'm assuming I haven't we've stated, haven't read the manga, but it's like I bet it's about like I bet it all takes place in the desert. So it's a pretty good name. Explains what it is. It's a real Mad Max situation.
Oh yeah, I would like to see Toriyama's take on Mad Max.
This might be it, honestly. If you look at some of the art, it looks like vehicles out in the desert. I think this might be it.
Oh man, okay. Now you're giving me hope that might not be warranted, but I'm excited now.
Do a little research.
We got another big look at Alan Wake 2. We had the man himself, Sam Lake, come up looking all dapper in his nice tux. Share some interesting story stuff. Like there's things we knew about. Like we knew it was going to be you split time between playing as Alan and the new character Saga, who's like the FBI agent, and that it's basically two scenarios where Saga is investigating the what's the name of the town? Bright Falls.
I think so. Yeah, it's been a while.
And Alan's trapped in the dark place. But he dropped the reveal that you can switch between the characters at any point in the story, almost like kind of like Grand Theft Auto 5 style. It sounds
that's surprising. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like at any point, or at least most points, like I think he said there might be a prompt that appears that you can just be, like, hey, I'm playing as Alan, and then go, you know what, I'm going to see what Saga's doing, and just hit a button, and then you'll just switch to Saga wherever I guess you last left her, and that you can jump back and forth as often as you want, or you can play the entire game as just one of them, and that's I'm like curious of like how the story flows if you are switching back and forth, and like do things advance. I would assume things would have to advance for one character when you're playing the other one, right? Like they're not going to be exactly where you left them before. So like would that be like if I spend a lot of time as Saga and then jump to Alan, he's like, I don't know, in the grips of a monster that he ran into, and you're like, what happened to you? What since I last what have I jumped into here?
Yeah, I'm curious about it. I don't love generally like multiple protagonists, like in a weird way. Like Remedy did it with Max Payne 2, where you played as Max, and for a couple levels you played as Mona Sachs. And I remember even back in the day, I actually found that pretty disappointing because they just played identically. Like there wasn't really any advantage or disadvantage as playing as one or the other. It was exactly the same, Yeah. But and the other thing is like they're referring to it as their first survival horror game, which is fun. The idea of Remedy sort of like, putting their stake in the ground, being like, yeah, we're doing survival horror.
This game, you could tell they've been studying those Resident Evil remakes because, oh my god, it looks.
Yeah. Well, I want actually the thing I was getting at is Resident Evil, where it was like, could I play this like Resident Evil 2, where I sort of there's like two scenarios that you play through? Because that's how I will probably play it. I'll play through once as what's her name, Saga,
yes.
Saga, and then I'll play through as Alan Wake. I don't really see myself switching back and forth, but we'll see. I mean, maybe that's the structure of the game. Maybe it encourages you to switch back and forth in some strange way.
Yeah, he made it seem like it was more going to be like your choice. I'm wondering if there are points in the story where it's like, hey, it might be a good idea to be Saga now. Maybe. And I guess it depends on how directly their like interactions like meet in the middle. Like if I do something as Alan, does that have any direct impact on Saga? Positive or negative? And because that's Resident Evil 2 did that of like depending on the scenario, like if I found something with Leon, it changes something with Claire's playthrough. I wonder if there's any of that kind of stuff. I don't know. If nothing else, I guess it encourages multiple playthroughs just to see like, what happens if I only play as just one, or if I jump around a bunch. But yeah, that was like kind of wild when he dropped that, and we saw a little bit more gameplay again, seeing how like Resident Evil 4 it looks is like. I mean, to me, that's like great. I love those Resident Evil games, so it's like, sure, if you guys want to go with that, I'm down for that. It definitely looks scarier than the first game, which I think the first game was more creepy than scary to me, at least for me personally.
It was more weird, which is
like,
cool. I love the original Alan Wake for that reason.
I like it. So yeah, this one looks like it's leaning more into the horror stuff, which I'm down with. It's coming out October, I think. 19th. But I'm saying that because it shares a month with Alone in the Dark, another classic survival horror series getting reimagined in an RE-esque style,
with two protagonists as well.
Yeah, which I mean, in their defense, the original game did that too. Like they kind of really sort of laid the foundation for that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like I wonder if Alan Wake 2, in its effort to be a survival horror game, if they're like, well, we gotta have two protagonists. That's how you do survival horror,
Didn't you read the manual?
Yeah, right.
God. I said, hey, we talked about how fighting game fans would be eating good. I mean, survival horror fans, if these two games work out, we already got the really good Dead Space and Resident Evil 4 remakes earlier this year, so you might be getting two other exceptional survival
is
horror
Alone in the
games.
Dark out this year as well?
October as well.
Oh, that's
they might be like a week apart. Honestly, I think they're both like towards the end of October.
That'd be wild. I mean, if we got Dead Space, Resident Evil 4, and Alone in the Dark all in the same year, which it looks like it's going to be, unless Alone in the Dark gets pushed out or something.
Yeah, I mean, they just announced the release date recently, so that would be surprising. But yeah, Alan Wake 2 still looks cool. Kyle, what is John Carpenter's Toxic Commando?
It's a great question. I mean, I like John Carpenter as a director. he's always been an outspoken video game fan. Like, that seems to be what he is doing in his retirement from filmmaking, is just sitting around and playing video games.
Living his best life.
Why not? I mean, we all aspire to that.
I think he plays Fortnite. Is he running around like building stuff? And
no, I think he was probably one of the people who was like, thank God build mode is out of here now. But I bet he plays a ton of Fortnite. Like, he seems like a Call of Duty Fortnite. He loves Dead Space. He's always talking about wanting to make a Dead Space movie. It's like right? Like, I could be wrong about that. But
no, you're right. I that was him, right? It wasn't like Ridley Scott. Yeah, I think it was him.
No. Ridley Scott. I actually, quick aside, I have a question for if I ever get a chance to do like an interview with Ridley Scott. It's like, I want to know if he knows anything about Metroid, because like he's like Ripley or Ridley is like named after him, and I wonder if he is even aware of that. You know,
there was a period as a kid where I would confuse the two names in a way that the two names
Ridley and Ridley and Samus.
No, Ridley and Ellen Ripley. Right. Like, I would get those two confused, and it was up there with confusing Lex Luthor from DC with Lex Luger, the wrestler. Those were like the two big, like, wait, which one? I know Ripley. And it's weird because at that point, I would have seen way more Alien than I had played of Metroid. But I still knew who Ridley was.
Yeah. But you probably weren't tracking directors back in those days. But as far as what the game is, it looks like a zombie shooter. I believe it's Saber, right? The World War Z folks,
right?
And it looks like very focused on vehicle stuff as well. Like, you're fighting zombies, but then also a big part of it seems to be that like you're maintaining this vehicle through the course of the game. Like, it's a tool as much as it is an A to B sort of mechanic. Like, you're running over zombies and you're pulling other vehicles out of the mud with like tractor pulls and stuff like that. And
is it almost like they're going for like a AAA version of what you would do in like those far lone sales games, or like a lot of that is like, hey, you have a vehicle that you have to maintain, and it is like your main sort of like method of
Days
surviving.
Gone had a little bit of that, with your motorcycle. You had to like maintain that. So like conceptually, like that all sounds cool, but seeing the footage, it's like, I don't know. It looks like a zombie shooter, and the sort of John Carpenter of it all didn't really sort of surface in that trailer. Like, I'm very curious what his role in this game is. Did he
they not say if he
script?
Yeah, this was one that I didn't see a ton, because I think I was writing a story and I was kind of half listening and looking at it. They didn't say anything about, like, other than just his name on the title, like, oh, he's doing this, or
it's just John Carpenter's Toxic Commando. And I don't know, he's on Twitter, I think. I wonder if he's said anything about it.
He's just like, I have no idea what this is. I was not informed.
No one asked me about this.
I guess
the Horror Master on Twitter, has he tweeted about it? He retweeted the reveal.
Okay.
But yeah, I would be very curious, because like he is like, we've even talked to him for Game Informer, at least on one occasion, just about like Tim Turry back in the day. Just talked to him about his love of horror video games, and he's not like, because sometimes you'll see a celebrity who like they play video games and they're like, and then those video games are like, I play Call of Duty and Madden and Mario Kart.
Yeah, play the arcade version of Super Mario Brothers.
Yeah, but like he is like someone who will like share like tweets and stuff of like for his review of the Dead Space remake. You know what I mean? Like he's like that other. He's like closer to us in terms of the kind of games he's playing. Like he's playing a lot of single player experiences and stuff like that.
He's on the Ben Schwartz side of things.
Yes, exactly, absolutely. There you go.
He's in that tier.
Yeah. So so that being said, like I'm curious what this game looks like, because it's like if this is finally his chance to kind of be really involved in the development of a video game, and as someone who has played and enjoyed a lot of good video games, like it could all be really good, But we'll see.
We shall see. Baldur's Gate 3 has got the guy that played Lucius Malfoy as a bad guy. That's cool. Jason Isaacs, cool. Why not?
Yeah.
No
complaints.
Yeah. I don't like that guy. Or the people he plays. Spider-Man 2, we got our first look at Venom as well as the box art. Not in-game. sort of like some art. But he definitely
saved that all for Sony.
Exactly. He definitely looks like Venom. Was the one note that I had for that. Like, he's big, he's muscly, he's got teeth and a tongue. That's not really any deviation there, which, you know.
This ain't your Topher Grace Venom that we're looking at here.
This ain't more of a Tom Hardy, I guess. Which
that's his name, right? Is it Topher?
I think it's
What's his name?
Is it
Topher
Trofer or Topher?
It is Topher Grace. Okay, yeah. Which is I thought maybe his last name wrong.
You know that he was bullied as a kid and they called him Topher the Gopher. That was his life growing up. I'm calling it now. But yeah, also Spider-Man 2 release date October 20th.
There's a lot happening around October.
It turns out Venom was wrong because he said September. I wonder if they pushed him on just to spite him. Voice actor. He in his little leak, he was like, "I'm pretty sure it's coming out September." You know, so
right,
a lot of people were dead set on that. Pal World is a game that I've had just a strange fascination with since it was first really announced like 2 years ago. This is the Pokemon game with guns. It's kind of like really the best way you can ever describe this game because I think it nails it.
Which is like they did on stage, I think, right? Didn't Keeley say that?
Yeah, I mean, that's what you say when you talk about this game. It's like, hey, do you know Pokemon? Yeah, what if you gave them an AK-47? And what if you had one, too?
If they had that on like the Xbox showcase or the PlayStation showcase, they'd be too scared to say that, right? They would be too scared to use those words. But Keeley's just a man. He can say Pokemon with guns, you know?
Yeah, remember he was weird when he held his arms out in a very like kind of threatening, like, what you gonna do kind of way. Like, he was really inviting Nintendo to do something about it. But that's going into early access in January. This game has been delayed a few times. I believe it was supposed to go into early access sometime this year. But now we have a confirmation. Power World is it's on the list of games that I'm still not entirely convinced is real.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, like you're like, I feel like I need to touch this to know that this is happening. There's like I said, there's a few other games on that list, so this gets it closer over that line of reality, which is nice. Real quick, the Lord of the Rings Return to it's not Moira, it's Moria.
The Mines of Moria, right? Is that
what it's Return to the title, but the Mines is like the setting because he plays dwarves and you go craft and dig stuff up. I only bring this up because I just realized that this will be, because this is coming out sometime this year, this will be the third Lord of the Rings game to come out in 2023 somehow.
Oh, well, because it was a mobile game and Gollum.
Yeah, the mobile game was the one that EA put out.
Yeah,
which was Heroes of Middle-earth, I believe it's called.
Yeah, and
then of course the Game of the Year, Gollum, and
Game of a Year. Yeah,
it was a game that came out this year, and then this thing, and I'm just like, man, I feel like we used to go like years without Lord of the Rings anything, and all of a sudden there's 3 games coming out, and I was like, is that like an Embracer thing? Because remember, Embracer bought the IP.
I mean, not that Lord of the Rings has never been popular or anything, but I think the Amazon show, despite kind of like really not moving the needle at all.
I was gonna say, don't people not like that show? I haven't seen it, but
same. But like, I think just that it was happening probably got a lot of people, like, because games take a long time to make. So when they were like, oh yeah, you know, the license is out there with Embracer, Amazon's working on a show, like we're heading back into, you know, Lord of the Rings is coming back in a big way, and then the show came out, and it kind of was like, no one really cared. It was like the worst case scenario where it was like not so bad that everyone complained about it all the time, but also not good enough for people to get excited about. It was just like totally middle of the road, which made it become completely invisible.
Yeah, I think you mean middle of the earth.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's like in some cases it's almost better to be so bad that it's noteworthy. Like maybe the worst thing to be is just sort of like boring.
Yeah, it was like, I think people...
Inoffensive?
The people who watched it all the way through were like, yeah, it's fine. You know, I finished it, you know, but no one was over the moon for it, and no one hated it, you know.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Speaking of which, real quick, did you like that Witcher 3 trailer, Season 3? Are you a Witcher Netflix guy?
I have watched both seasons, but they had a Radiohead song as the soundtrack for that trailer.
Yes,
Burn
they
the
did.
Witch, which is a great song, and I really thought maybe it's funny because every trailer has to have a slowed down cover, some weird cover of some famous song, and I thought maybe Radiohead might be immune to that,
Especially because they already have slow songs. Like we could just play
yeah.
like half of what's on OK Computer and be good to go.
No, but Marcus, you don't understand. This song was called "Burn the Witch," and then the show is called "The Witcher." So,
right.
That's why they had to do it
damned,
that way.
but the actual, it's like this is a weird tangent, but like Army of the Dead, the movie that Batista from like a year or two ago. Remember that, the Netflix movie?
Oh, right, yeah.
With the heist. They played "Zombie" at the end, like the Cranberry song.
Right.
And it's like, you guys remember that song's about like, it was like a protest song about like kids getting murdered or something, right? But it's like, you can tell they're like, well, there's a zombie in the title. Who cares? They're like, well, that's not.
I mean, that's Snyder, right? That is a Zack Snyder, like, it's all surface level for him, right? It's all just style over substance when it comes to Zack Snyder movies. So of course it was just like, yeah, the song's called "Zombie" and it's a zombie movie. It works,
She says it like 3 times in the chorus.
Yeah,
What more
so funny. Yeah, yeah. He never thinks about it more than that,
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know, man. Witcher, like, that show's cool. I enjoy it. I'm curious to see what they do without Henry Cavill and how they square that.
Yeah. Are you disappointed by that? Are you enough of a fan where like, oh, I kind of bummed out that it's not going to be him anymore?
I'm weirdly fine with it. If I don't care about that show enough to get in arms about it, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not like, yeah. I remember Xander Cannon, who a comic book artist who did a bunch of our
Game Enforcer
covers.
Yeah.
He once described himself as being, I don't care who they cast as Batman years old. Which is like, you just hit a point where you're just like, yeah, whatever, someone else can play Batman, great. And that's kind of how I feel about that.
Yeah, like someone else will always play Batman. That's just,
yeah, someone else can be Geralt. Let's see how they do. I don't know, like, like, I like Henry Cavill, he's cool, but like, he's not making a break on that show for me.
Yeah, since we're on the TV bit, real quick, I'm touching that Twisted Metal thing, which apparently had that footage been out. Apparently, it was my first time seeing it.
I think it was new. I'm almost certain it was new. Yeah.
Okay, but I know that they've said that they were going for comedy with this, so I wasn't surprised by the tone necessarily. But even then, I was like, "Oh, we're really leaning into it with just also a thong song reference and a Cisco reference."
I mean, I've never played the Twisted Metal games. It's not a series I'm passionate about. Yeah, never got into them. And that trailer basically confirmed that I'll never watch that show. Like, I just absolutely not. Like, not doing anything for me at all.
You're not hunting down a copy of Twisted Metal Black, which to be fair is tonally way the other way from what the show is doing.
It's always like a dark show, dark game, right? Isn't it?
I mean, Black in particularly is like, that's when they went like extra dark. But yeah, it's weird because like the Sweet Tooth design is kind of based on the Twisted Metal Black version of him in the show. It's also weird to me knowing because like Sweet Tooth in the show is voiced by Will Arnett, who sort of like introed it. I'm disappointed that he didn't take the opportunity to hold up an energy drink as a fun jab to The Rock's appearance, because it was very similar. Of like, he's doing a cell phone selfie video of like, hey, here's the thing I'm doing. I don't know, have fun, enjoy your games, whatever The Rock said last year.
Right.
I was like, man, he seems like a funny, clever guy where he would have watched The Rock thing and would have like totally just ripped on that.
Yeah, I mean, Will Arnett's very funny, so it's weird that he is the opposite of funny in that clip. That's weird that they pulled that off.
It's his voice, but it's the body is Samoa Joe, the pro wrestler, which is very also strange because he's like another. I mean, his character portrayed really seriously, so seeing him just in that situation, it was just like, that was all weird. My mind was going all over the place watching that.
Yeah, I mean, maybe if it's contextualized, maybe it's better in the full thing. But yeah, did not enjoy that clip. Did not sell me on the show. I do know the Doughboys podcast. I don't know if you're a fan, Marcus.
I've heard of it. I've never listened.
Yeah, it's one of the co-hosts, Mike Mitchell, is in the Twisted Metal show, and that's about the most interested. That's the thing that's like, okay, I want to see what that guy. What he's
like
fun.
as a character from the game, or like a small.
He plays a character named Stu, apparently.
Oh, no, I don't know who that is.
But yeah, maybe like within the context, like right, if you see it all as one piece, maybe it's funnier and more interesting. But at that isolated clip, I was like, ugh, this is rough, and this is not doing it for me.
Yeah, no cars were exploding, which is a weird choice. Like a Dragon Gaiden, the man who erased his name, comes out on my birthday, November 9th.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I probably won't play this, and not because I'm not a Yakuza fan, but I am. But I haven't played, because this game takes place in between 6 and Like a Dragon,
right?
Sort of explaining what Kiryu was doing during that time and why he shows up in Like a Dragon. I'm still want to make my way through the series proper, because I've only ever played 0 and 7. Mm-hmm. So I haven't really played the full Kiryu saga, and I have like vague ideas of how 6 ends, but like I don't want to know. Right. I'm kind of going back and forth, because I am going to play Like a Dragon 8. So I'm still debating about how I'm going to do that, because there's no way I'm going to get through all those games before then.
Yeah, if we're being honest, right?
So yeah, this I might change my tune on November 9th, but yeah, it looks cool. I like Yakuza. Again, this was another one where like the Prince of Persia, where it's like, I'm surprised they didn't save this for the RGG summit that's like next week.
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah. They were speaking Japanese, right?
In the trailer?
Yeah. Were they speaking English?
But oh man, this was another one where I was distracted with the writing. I think it was subtitled.
Okay, I'm just curious, because like I actually like the dub in 7 a lot. Like I would rather play dubbed, and then the most recent one didn't have a dub, and so like the one that takes place in the past.
Well, that was also they could have dubbed it, but I think that was because that was a remake of an older game before they started dubbing. Like that was like pre-Western popularity, but like all the new games, like the Judgment games, have been dubbed too. So
yes, I believe so. I just hope that they're dubbing it is like, and I know that's probably blasphemy for some people. They're like probably like, you need to play in Japanese. It's like a very Japanese game, but yeah. I like the dub. I'm a stupid American. I'm sorry.
Calling the Yakuza to put a hit on you. Let's see. Quantic Dream has Under the Waves, and also they revealed another game they're publishing called Lisfanga?
Right. It looked like a 2D kind of thing. It looked cool.
It looked cool. That's the only reason I called it out, was I was watching that going like, oh, this is hitting the notes that I like. It's funny because like it's another time manipulation game. So we had, Prince of Persia, the one that was, it's not, there's no time powers in that. I don't believe. But just because of the association with time, I looked at this as like, oh, we're doing another, like, I don't know, mildly Prince of Persia adjacent 2D action game. I don't know. It looks cool. It was fun.
Yeah.
Excited for that. Are you gonna buy a Porsche branded Xbox Series X, Kyle?
I think I'm good. Probably.
You sure? Okay.
Yeah, I think I'm all right. I don't know if you can even buy those. I think they're just doing them as giveaways. I think probably, right?
You get one when you buy a Porsche. It's just like in the car waiting for you. It's like, I guarantee you, when he started that conversation, that somebody in that audience got excited thinking they were going to get a free Porsche.
Yeah, right.
I bet you there was one person that thought that this was an Oprah situation and that they were going to check under their seats and find some car keys.
Everyone just violently scraping the bottom of their chairs. Like, oh, come on.
And then they were disappointed when they saw an Xbox that looked like a weird piece of candy come up on stage and was like, oh, never mind. It's this like candy cane looking console. Never mind.
Good.
Immortals of Avium got another big look. It looks cool. It was weird because we just saw like another extended look at that game like at the PlayStation thing. So I was like, maybe I'm hitting the point with that game where I've seen enough. And I'm like, yeah, it looks cool. I'll probably play that. This didn't change my standing on that game, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, that's a game that I think a lot of people, myself included, are kind of gonna like. It seems like it's got a lot of stuff going for it. Like that, the gameplay footage was cool. And it really just comes down to like how does it function as a full product, like a full piece,
right?
I mean, and I went to their studio a couple months ago and played it, and it felt good. I like what I played, so I'm optimistic for that game. Yeah.
It's funny you said optimistic because I was going to say Fortnite has Domestic Prime coming, which is what his closest friends call him.
Is that right?
Referring to Optimus Prime of Transformers fame coming to the new season of Fortnite. Don't ask me what it is. I hate the way Fortnite names its seasons of like, oh, it's Chapter 5, Part 2, Book 3.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means exactly. Why couldn't they just say Fortnite season? Just keep it season 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't know.
Yeah, Wilds, I guess it's called.
Sure, it can be.
Which
that
is like
too.
usually they have like a handful of like, you know, IP and stuff. So it's kind of I was honestly kind of surprised. I was like, oh, just Transformers? All right, cool.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of Transformers, Kyle. It's probably more
That's
than
true.
they could. I mean, there's got to be a Optimus Primal in there with that new the Beast Wars movie. I would like to play as Cheetor in Fortnite. That'd be. You have to be able to transform, right? Like your character is also just a vehicle.
I would think so. It wasn't really clear in that sort of the footage that they did, but yeah, and he also shrinks down to be like human sized, right? Because like just
known Optimus Prime power.
Yeah, like you can't be giant Optimus Prime in Fortnite.
I mean,
I guess
you
could, but
if you weren't a coward, you could do that. I would like to see just giant robots stomping around, just getting 5 kills because you stepped on a whole squad.
Yeah, but I'm curious if he can transform. I mean, usually they do really cool stuff like that, right? Like with the Spider-Man stuff, you can web swing in Fortnite.
Yeah,
you know?
Dragon Ball, you can go Super Saiyan.
Yeah, and you can do Kamehamehas and stuff like that. So I hope he has some kind of cool thing with him, you know.
And that brings us to the end where we mentioned at the top of the show, close out Summer Games Fest with a big trailer for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I don't know why Jeff built this up the way that he did before he announced it, where he was like, this is it, guys. Like, this is the big thing. The rumors were true. Because if you've been paying attention, it was kind of obvious that this would be at the show because in the last almost week, the Final Fantasy VII Twitter account every day was posting a new Q&A question where they would just have the producer answer one specific question, like, do I need to play 7 Remake to play Rebirth? And his answer was just an extended, nah. and they had counted down, if you kept track, and I know Wes pointed this out because he was writing a lot of the news stories, where the 7th day of these would be Summer Games Fest. So it's kind of like, right. I could see that.
So if you were paying attention, it maybe wouldn't have been that big surprise. I certainly wasn't. I kind of thought like we wouldn't hear about Rebirth at all until 16 was out. Was sort of my thought. You know what I mean? Like, get 16 out the door. Let's keep the conversation focused on 16, and then we will talk about 7 Remake too. So it surprised me, but I wasn't really paying attention, to be fair.
Yeah, I wonder if those audiences are different enough, because 7, a lot of the appeal for that game, especially the fan base, is like pre-existing Final Fantasy fans of like you've been here for a while because you love the original game, or if you came in with Remake, whereas 16 is like a brand new thing. So it's, I don't know, maybe there's enough of a divide there. Or like, I mean, if you're
I'm kind of a weird Final Fantasy fan. Is I'd always dabbled with them. And enjoyed a few, like even back in the Super Nintendo, I played a lot of Final Fantasy 2, or I guess 4. I always get confused about that. But 15 was actually the first one that I like finished and saw credits on. And from that point on, I was like, you know what? I think I'm in on this series. And I played 7 Remake and enjoyed it, and played the DLC, and I'm excited to play 16. So I'm like a weird. I never beat 7. Like I've played 7 a couple of times, like tried to play 7. And never got further than Midgard. Like I left Midgard was the furthest I ever got.
Oh wow!
So like for me, playing 7 Remake is basically the equivalent of like playing a brand new game.
Yeah. I mean, in some ways it kind of is.
Yeah, I mean that's true.
The storytelling stuff.
I wonder just how much of like what percentage of am I in terms of that kind of player of Final Fantasy VII Remake fans? You know what I mean? Is it 50-50? Am I like part of a small group of like 20% or something like that who really doesn't have really any nostalgia for the original? I don't know. I'm not sure. Yeah,
I mean, I think that first game sold pretty well. I don't think it did like gangbusters from what I remember, but I think it did fine.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly one of the most successful Final Fantasies, I think, period. right?
Yeah.
Like,
but I think those numbers kind of told me, like, okay, I the bulk of this must have been just like existing Final Fantasy VII fans who are like, are aging out of gaming at this point, and like whoever's left is, like, yeah, I'll play a remake to that RPG I played in high school. And like I always feel like any newcomers were just like probably people that just were aware of Seven's just reputation, right?
yeah.
And they're like, oh, this is for me because I don't want to go back to the version where Cloud has like paintbrush looking hands.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's me, right? Like, I watched Advent Children. I was familiar with the characters. I know who Cloud and Aerith are and Sephiroth. Like, I know them. I know what they look like and I know their names. But in terms of like the deeper story, 7 has been an opportunity for me to actually like finally understand it.
So what did this trailer do for you as someone that, because you've never made it outside of Midgar in the original, which is kind of funny because it's like it's not that it's not.
I know.
Take that long to get out of there. But,
it's funny because I did the deepest dive on 7 remake with MinMax.
Right.
And I was like, yeah, I've barely played Final Fantasy VII. I don't know. I've never played any of this stuff. And then I found randomly I booted up my Vita, which is where I got the furthest on Final Fantasy VII. And I booted it up, and I realized that my save was right outside of Midgard. Like, I had basically played everything from Remake. I just, like, completely forgot. But yeah, in terms of the trailer, actually, other than getting excited because it's like, oh, yeah, I'm excited to see what's next for this game, the sort of minutia of it, of, like, the story stuff, right? Like, didn't really do anything for me because I was like, well, I don't know what's going on. Like, is this new stuff, or is this exactly emulating what was in the original game, or is this another instance where they're making radical changes? So mostly for me, it was just like, I'm excited to know more about the sequel, and I'm excited to see these characters, in action in a trailer.
I was like, did your heart skip a beat in the beginning when you saw the characters getting like stretchered out?
I guess I was a little confused, but
Red 13, a little blanket over him. You're like, what happened?
No, I didn't. My heart stayed steady. Kept my heart rate stayed the same throughout. So,
gotcha. Yeah, I thought the trailer looked great. I mean, I love that game. I'm a Final Fantasy VII fan in general.
Of the original.
Of the original, yes.
Okay, cool.
And I liked Remake a lot too. It was fun to see Yuffie part of the main cast, which we figured she would be, but it was cool to see her doing gameplay combos with like Red 13. The only new face we saw was like Elena joining the Turks, which was nice. So now we got the full threesome ready to go.
She may be new, but she's still a Turk, which I just thought was like a weird phrase. Okay.
A lot of weight behind that, rude man, a few words for a reason. And then a good bit of it's weird. It's like I don't want to say what like the context of certain things just because of like you don't know the full story of Final Fantasy VII. I presume I don't know if you've ever looked it up.
No.
But, okay.
Once remakes, I mean, like, it's one of those things. It's like everyone knows about Aerith, right? It's like knowing who Darth Vader. It's like knowing Darth Vader's identity. You're just kind of like born knowing that somehow. You don't know why you know that, but you just know that.
It's the most well-known spoiler in video games.
Right. So like I know that, but like, yeah, I don't know. I've never like gone down a Wikipedia rabbit hole of like learning the story because in my head, I was like, I'll play 7 someday, even though that was like a total lie. Like, and I know it's a lie. I just never wanted to admit it to myself. And then when Remake comes out, I'm like, oh, well, I'll just play a Remake. And that's now. So, yeah, so it's nice to go in with surprises still.
Yeah. So, yeah, just for those that do know the story, like, you see some familiar stuff. Some stuff that was a little surprised to see in the trailer, especially the stuff with Tifa and Sephiroth. I wasn't expecting to see.
Okay.
But yeah, looks awesome. It's coming out early 2024, which tracks because they always said it was coming out winter, which can always mean either really late this year or early next year. So I know some people are calling it a delay, but I was like, no, technically not really. Also, it's coming on 2 disc, which what does that mean exactly?
Well, someone pointed out, which apparently the first one did too.
See, I saw that too, and I bought 7 Remake digital, so I don't know this. But I think it's because they didn't say, from what I remember of Remake's marketing, they never pointed that out. But like, I think I was also told that it was like one of them was just a data disc. Like it wasn't like the game was strictly divided between two discs. I think one of them was just like, oh, this is the install disc and this is the
I mean, disc. I kind of like that. Like I always loved in Metal Gear Solid the moment when you swapped discs. You know, it's like this seminal moment. You're like at the sort of the 75% point of the game. So I always kind of like the multiple disc things. But like Red Dead Redemption 2 was 2 discs. I had forgotten that Final Fantasy VII Remake was 2 discs. But really, usually what it is like you put one disc in to install a bunch of data, and then you put another disc in to install the rest of the data, and then you never actually swap discs in the middle of the game.
Was Red Dead 2 disc on Xbox?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, hold on a second.
Okay, Marcus is for the audio listener
Sorry,
leaving to go check. I'm almost certain.
For I have a you can see here if you're watching the video, I have a PS4 copy of Red Dead Redemption 2, and I was like, wait, was this always 2? Oh my god, it was.
It's 2 discs? Yeah.
Well, one of them is a data disc.
Yeah.
And the second was the play disc. So I don't think... I was like, I don't remember actually swapping discs like midway through Red Dead.
No,
like, hey,
you don't
put this
swap.
one in first to get it ready, and then this is the one you actually play. So
and
it's
I'm sure that'll be the case with Rebirth as well. But I think it's just like a fun thing to say on stage. It's like 2 discs. It just makes it feel massive, you know?
I don't know. I feel like if you're going to... Because it's like, if it's just like a utility thing, why would you put that so prominently? Like, I think it might be like, hey, this game is so big that we... And especially because Final Fantasy, I think more than any other series, is so... Their history with multiple discs is such a big thing with those classic games that it's like, hey, remember how 7, like original 7, was 3 discs?
Yeah.
And like pretty much all the PlayStation era games were multiple discs. I don't know. I feel like it might just be like, no, they're both, I guess, play disc. Basically, like there will be a point where it's gonna say like, hey, switch to disc 2 for the rest of the story.
Otherwise, just I would be into that. Like,
it makes me almost want to buy the physical version.
Yeah, I still like buying physical. So
yeah,
I'm one of those weirdos.
Also, what does that mean for digital? Like, how big is that? If what we're saying is true, like, how big is that download going to be? Because a Blu-ray can hold a lot. You know, if you have 2 play discs of a Blu-ray, like that's essentially 2 like open world games, I would imagine.
Let's see, how big is the? I wonder how.
Because think about all the huge games that come out that are only on 1 disc. You know, like The Witcher 3 is gigantic, and that was 1 disc, and.
So apparently 7 Remake was 100 gigabytes.
Right.
Which that sounds about right for like a big game. Like Red Dead's probably about 170 to 100 gigabytes.
It's kind of wild too, because like that, like Final Fantasy VII Remake, like that was not open world in the traditional sense, because you know it was all in Midgar, but it was so dense with like effects. And like you could see the money in everything basically.
Yes,
It was a amazing looking game, but it wasn't like an open world game necessarily. I mean, you couldn't even.
I mean, it really wasn't at all. Like not even necessarily. It was a linear game fully. You know?
Yeah, like it was just like hubs, you know, between like the wall market and stuff. So yeah, like again, I was like, how big is this game? Is it if it has to be 2 play discs? And especially because this is only part 2 of a planned trilogy. Like there's a 3rd game coming after this. So, like how big is that going to be if this is the big middle chapter?
I mean, I think it's probably going to be like 100 gigabytes, which is like, you know what I mean? Like I don't know. I don't think it's going to be more than the biggest games, right? Like I think Call of Duty Warzone's around 100 gigabytes lately.
Like you don't think we're getting 2 Skyrims?
No, I don't think so. But yeah, who knows? I think this one's still going to be pretty linear. I don't know if this is going to have any open world kind of stuff. You know?
I mean,
because there was a
we're in the world map now. Like now that because in the original game, once you leave Midgar, the world opens up. Like, hey, you can go to different cities now and whatever. So like, if we're at that point now, then it.
But the thing is, though,
the trailer had those big, open areas, but it could just because Final Fantasy 16 is doing the sort of like that's not like true open world, but it's like really large hubs.
Yeah, it's linear. But like, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but like, I think when you beat the DLC, there was like a trailer, right, that showed the crew basically showing up at their next destination.
Right.
And this based on what little I know about the original Final Fantasy VII, to me it felt like what they had done with that sequence, with that cutscene at the end of the DLC, was was basically say like all the stuff that would have been open world, all that stuff of you like walking right to your next destination in the big open world of the original game, we just made that a cutscene, right? Like, and maybe I'm misinterpreting, but I would really be surprised if it was like open world in the way that the original was, where you just it wasn't like open world, right? It was more that you just had like a big area to when you where you walked between locations, right?
It was like an overworld, basically.
Right? Like how like the original Final,
overworld, yeah.
Okay, so I don't think there's going to be an overworld, but I'm perfectly happy to be wrong. I think that'd be cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a chance that what you're saying is true too. Like that, I think it could go either way. Yeah, it just depends on just. Yeah, I don't know, that 2-disc thing threw me for a loop. What a weird thing. It's just like if it's just this. I'm holding up Red Dead again. If it's just like, hey, data display this, like, why even say that? Why make that?
Yeah,
I
don't know.
Yeah, that's like other games do that. I don't know, but yeah, that game's coming out early 2024. It looks rad. I'm excited for it.
Yes.
In addition, like, we have 2 long tables of like feasts going on. Like, there's one that all the fighting games are hanging out with, like at the lunch table. There's the one with the survival horror fans are eating out, having a good time.
Right.
Final Fantasy fans have a pretty decent sized table right now too, because we're getting 2 landmark entries within a year of each other. So, and they're only not even 6 months apart, assuming this is like January, February. So yeah. Everyone's eating good. That's what we like to see, right? No one's going hungry. No, we're not playing
Fortnite
hunger.
Fans have Optimus Prime. Everyone's in good shape.
No Temple of the Dog here. It's a hunger strike reference, but yeah, and that wraps up Summer Games Fest. Like I said, like a good C show. Like I said, coming out of it, I'd say Sonic and Prince are the 2 like new things, and I'm like, hell yeah, and everything else is like, oh, we knew this.
A pair of 2D platformers are like the highlights. Which is like, all right, cool.
Is that an indictment? Some might say, who knows?
No.
Yeah, but yeah, I think we'll wrap it up here. No questions this week since we spent so much time with this discussion, but we're going to do a little bit of housekeeping first and foremost. Be sure to leave us a review on, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Tell us what you think of the show. We'd appreciate it if you gave us a 5-star review. It helps us out a lot, but, be honest. Let us know. Don't hold back. And, if you don't hold back enough, we might read it on the air. We've read podcast reviews before. Maybe you could be the one if you're honest enough. Who can say? Otherwise, check us out on all of our other channels, like GameInformer.com, of course, our main website. Check us out there. You can check us out on our 2 YouTube channels. We have our main Game Informer YouTube channel, and we have our Game Informer Show's YouTube channel, which is where you're watching this show right now. And that's just our channel where we have our longer form video content. All of our Twitch archives are there. Replay is there. So, subscribe to both if you want to get all of the amazing video content that we put out. Also, be sure to check out our Twitch channel, twitch.tv/GameInformer. Kyle and I are currently playing Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts from start to finish in our ongoing super replay of that. We also do a bunch of other weekly streams. Be sure to give us a subscription there. You can get into our Game Informer Discord channel where a lot of our awesome community members hang out. And as another reminder, if you want to buy the Game Informer magazine, you can subscribe to get the issues, or you can buy single issues of Game Informer now. All you got to do is go to GameStop.com/GameInformer, and you can buy individual issues for just $5.99 of the most recent 5 issues. Our Final Fantasy issue is up there now for purchase. It's a great way to support us, and it's a non-committal way to keep up with all of our awesome magazine content. And just to plug us on social media, if you want to find us, I am at Marcus Stewart 7 on Twitter. Kyle, you're at Kyle M. Hilliard. Mm-hmm. And if you want to follow Scott White, who was on our Diablo segment, he is at Professor RPG. Check out our Game Informer TikTok. Check out our podcasts, such as All Things Nintendo with Brian Shea. And of course, a big shout out to Matt Storm, aka DJ Stormageddon, who is our amazing editor for the Game Informer show. Be sure to check out their podcast, Fun and Games. and their BioWare podcast, Reignite. And yeah, in the future, if you want to send us questions to read on the show, you can send those at podcast@GameInformer.com. Or if you're part of our Discord channel, just drop them in the Game Informer Show Discord. And Kyle, I'm tired. We should get out of here. We've seen a lot of video games. We have a lot more video games, or rather, I should say, video game showcases to come.
Yeah, we got to finish up this magazine. We got to get this issue out the door, man.
Yeah, we got to do a lot. We got to record a replay. We got all kinds of fun stuff. We got to watch a Microsoft thing this weekend. Video games are happening, folks, and we couldn't be happier. So until then, have a great time. Play some games. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.